our meeting to order. It is 6 o'clock and declare that we do have a board quorum present. If you will please stand for our invocation, which will be led by Mr. Reinhardt, and our pledges of allegiance, which will be led by Mr. Dunn.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity for us to gather here to once again be somewhat normal. It's a blessing to be back here in our setting, to have our staff and folks able to visit with us. Ask that you be with us, give us guidance, strength, and direction as we go through our agenda tonight to do things that are best for all students in BISD. Walk with everyone in this room today, Lord. We ask that you especially be with our friend that's leaving, Lita Fox. She deserves a great retirement, and just bless her as she goes through those years. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Before y'all sit down, I would like to ask the board to begin making its way to the front as we transition into our awards, achievements, and recognitions.
Good evening, Superintendent Massey, Board President Howard, board members, and guests. My name is Brittany Rosenbaum, and I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs and Alternative Funding for Brazosport ISD. Tonight we have one special recognition, which will be presented by Erin Ennis, our Resource Development Coordinator.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you all for being here. At BISD, our vision for our Career and Technical Education Department is to develop a district-wide CTE program that is promoted by a coalition of parents, business, and community partners to enhance career opportunities for all students. With partners and investors like neighboring Wood, whose organization's vision aligns with BISD's, the vision becomes more and more a reality every day. Wood's vision statement for their organization is to inspire with ingenuity, partner with agility, and create new possibilities. Through several years of community and school district support, whether it's Wood's involvement in the BCPC Career Signing Day or investments and partnerships in CTE, Wood has recognized that achieving a sustainable future is one of the biggest challenges facing our generation. By holding true to their vision, Wood has graciously invested $27,000 in BISD's CTE Major Giving campaign. With this investment, BISD's CTE program can continue to inspire through ingenuity, through our amazing engineering track, enhance our agility in areas such as information technology and cybersecurity, while creating new possibilities in areas from manufacturing to health science. Wood's core values are care, commitment, and courage. BISD thanks Wood for their courage, their care, and their commitment to our students, our district, and our joint goal to create new possibilities for a brighter future. Here tonight to accept this recognition is J.J. Barrera, Vice President of Wood, and Andrew Dodge, Wood General Manager. Thank y'all.
Right. I know. When we get on the knee.
I'll take a couple. 1, 2, 3, and a second. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is. Wait a minute.
At this time, in accordance with BED local, the board will provide an audience with individuals who have signed up prior to the meeting to address the board. Tonight, we do not have any requests to comment to the board, so we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is to administer the oath of office. At this time, in accordance with BBB legal, we will ask Ms. Rebecca Kelly to administer the oath of office to our unopposed elected trustees. That is Mr. Reinhardt, Mr. Atkins, and Patty states she's not here.
She is not here, and so we will make arrangements to administer the oath of office to her.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
No, thank you. Okay. Yeah, get out.
Give you a couple of cheat sheets.
Readers. I know we have to get up here, you just can't see. No.
All right, we're going to do it at the same time. It is my pleasure to administer the oath of office to Mr. Joe Reinhardt, District 1, and Mr. Jerry Atkins, District 2.
Jerry, did you say geriatric?
So please repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Joe Reinhardt, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of trustee of the Brazosport Independent School District of the state of Texas,
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of trustee of the Brazosport Independent School District of the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
Thank you very
We
much.
need to sign this.
No, you've already signed one.
Well, you can do this one. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Don't thank you, don't thank you.
Thank you.
Wait just a minute, man, I have to present them. Take more than that. Stand up. Thank you.
We'll give it to Matt.
The next item we have on tonight's agenda is executive session. Executive session may be called for the purposes permitted by the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Sections 551.001 through 551.146, Sections 551.071, consultation with attorneys, Section 551.72, real property, Section 551.074, personnel matters, appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, dismissal, and complaint. The board will return shortly.
Where do we go up?
That way we just, we'll catch up with you.
Joe,
Here, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a succession planning reason, that's great, if it's not, no, if Joe and I talked about bringing him back, but he let him go. I'm glad. And Sean's great. And I love her, I've been talking to her here, Amy, yeah. He is one of the people that I interviewed and I just like got to find
And just sit down and eat in there. Seems like a long time, but in a way it doesn't seem like
Yeah.
very cool now.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those that, they sound like,
Yeah. Well, we told you it'd be short, so we're back. The first item that we have on our continued agenda is our first action item. Our first action item is the election of board officers for the 21-22 school year. In accordance with policy BDAA local, the board must select president, vice president, secretary, and assistant secretary for a term of 1 year.
I moved to nominate Mason Howard board president, Scott Schwartner vice president, Mr. Jerry Atkins as secretary, and Mr. Joe Reinhardt as assistant secretary.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Scott and seconded by Mr. Reinhardt to basically just keep the positions the same as they were last year. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed by nay. All right, that carries. You're stuck with us for another year. There you go. The next item that we have on the agenda is our consent agenda. Are there any items requested to be pulled from the consent agenda? If not, then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Move for approval.
Moved by Mr. Reinhardt. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Dunn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by nay. All right, that carries as well. Next item that we have is our public hearing. We will now ask Ms. Rebecca Kelly to conduct a public hearing to discuss the federal grant applications for the 21-22 school year. This is a public hearing, so audience participation is invited at the conclusion of her presentation.
Good evening. In alignment with board policy CB local,
It is my pleasure to conduct a public hearing on the federal grant applications for the 21-22 school year. Notice of the public hearing was published on the district's website June 9th and advertised in the Facts, the local newspaper, on June 12th. For the 21-22 school year, Brazosport ISD will have 15 Title I school-wide campuses. Utilizing the school-wide program allows each campus to utilize Title I funds to serve all students. The campus must conduct a comprehensive needs assessment, maintain a campus improvement plan, and facilitate family and parent engagement activities. For a campus to qualify as a Title I school-wide campus and receive Title I funds, it must have at least 40% of its students identified as economically disadvantaged. Brazoswood and Lake Jackson Intermediate are over the 40% mark, but they are served through comp ed dollars instead. Overall, the percentage of economically disadvantaged students district-wide increased from 60.35% at this planning time last year to 69.56% this year. Title I Part A provides supplemental resources to help schools with high concentrations of students from low-income families acquire the knowledge and skills in the state content standards and to meet the state student performance standards. These funds are allocated to our Title I campuses based on a per-pupil amount. This year, the 21-22 planning amount for Title I Part A is $2,701,810, which is a decrease of $46,551 from last year. Title I Part A funds will be utilized to provide campus-level intervention support to struggling students, provide training to teachers, administrators, and parents on implementing parent and family engagement plans. They will also provide Boys and Girls Club after-school activities at select campuses and communities and schools caseworkers at selected campuses. Title II Part A funds are intended to increase student achievement through improving teacher and principal quality and increasing the number of highly qualified teachers in classrooms and highly qualified principals in our schools. The planning amount for 21-22 is $427,538, which is a decrease of $7,299 from the last year. Funds are used to provide district-wide literacy and math specialists and academic dean of instruction at Brazosport High School, and to help fund the district-wide professional development plan. Title III Part A is to develop programs for limited English proficient students to attain English proficiency, develop high levels of academic attainment, and meet the state content standards and student achievement standards. The planning amount for 21-22 is $141,120, which is a $1,498 increase. The Title III Part A funds will be utilized for professional development, parent involvement, instructional resources, also used to provide a paraprofessional support person at Velasco Elementary, ESL parent classes, and tutorials to support our bilingual and ESL students. Title IV Part A is to improve student academic achievement by providing students with access to a well-rounded education, improving school conditions for student learning, and improving the use of technology. The planning amount for Title IV Part A is $203,758, which is an increase of $23,703 from last year. The Title IV Part A funding for 21-22 is being used to provide support for safe and healthy students by providing a health and safety specialist position to Brazosport and Brazoswood High School, as well as Freeport Intermediate School. These funds also provide communities and school caseworkers, and the remaining funds will be spent on secondary professional development opportunities. Carl D. Perkins is intended to strengthen career and technical education and develop more fully the academic knowledge, technical, and employability skills of our secondary education students who enroll in CTE programs. The planning amount for Carl D. Perkins for 21-22 is $137,423, which is an increase of $2,038 from last year. These funds are used to support quality CTE programs by providing students with strong experiences in all aspects of the industry by purchasing industry standard equipment, developing, improving, and expanding the use of technology in CTE, providing professional development programs to teachers, and to ensure the programs that are created meet the academic and career readiness standards. IDEA-B formula provides supplemental resources to help ensure eligible students ages 3 to 21 with disabilities are provided with free appropriate public education as required by the federal statute. The goal of the Special Education Department is to provide collaborative support services in an environment that embraces all learners to successfully achieve their full potential. Projected planning amounts for 21-22 is $2,574,306, which is a $17,178 increase over last year. These funds are used to provide appropriate support staff to academic and behavioral instruction and intervention, assessment and diagnosis, and the support of the individual education plan process. 97% of these dollars are spent on personnel. IDEA-B Preschool provides supplemental resources to help ensure eligible students ages 3 through 5 with disabilities are provided with free appropriate public education as required by the federal statute. The planning amount is $72,620, which will pay for one of our teachers in the early childhood special education program. Currently, BISD has 11 classrooms across the district, staffed by 11 teachers and 6 paraprofessionals. This is a public hearing, so I'll be happy to take any comments or questions from the board or from the audience.
Any questions from the board first?
Rebecca, I just want to be sure in the Title I Part A, I know the reduction is $46,005. We're not reducing any of the services we're going to provide to the students. Is that correct? They're still, everything that we do for them is going to continue to be done. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We actually have some carryover dollars from the 1920 and the 2021 school year. And so with those carryover dollars, we'll actually have more than that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Atkins?
Would you repeat the ECOD numbers again?
Yeah. So they went up from about 60% from last year to 69% this year. And at this point, the 69% is based on current. So we take a snapshot in time, which was, I think, back in March. And that's the amount that we use for the application purposes. So it's today, March's numbers compared to last year's numbers. So it's not a projection for next year. It's based on current.
Was there any change in the requirements to qualify?
No.
So we've just increased that much in folks
In fact,
who
we
need
find
help.
it harder and harder to get families to actually complete those applications because they're the same applications that they have to complete to be eligible for free and reduced lunch. And since we were able to serve all students for free this year, parents didn't have to fill them out. And so there was definitely some effort by our campus principal to collect as many of those forms. So.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Next item, we have another public hearing. We'll ask Ms. Kelly and Mr. Redden to conduct a public hearing to discuss the ESSER III federal application for funding. This is a public hearing, so audience participation is invited at the conclusion of this hearing as well, at the presentation.
So good evening again. Mr. Redden and I will conduct a public hearing to provide notice of the application of the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief 3 Fund, or what we call ESSER 3. This is a public hearing, so we will provide an opportunity for public comments or questions. The Texas Education Agency guidance on ESSER 3 application references required public notice before a district can submit an application to TEA. Board Policy CD Local, after the adoption of the resolution presented under the consent section of the agenda, states the district shall provide public notice of federal grant application through an information item at the board meeting and by publishing information on the district's website. The district shall make available opportunities for public to provide input as required by law of the granting agency. This public hearing will satisfy that requirement. The use of ESSER 3 funds are limited to a one-time grant, and at the end of the 2-year grant cycle, the 1-year carryover period, the funding will cease. Notice of the public hearing was published on the district's website on June 9th and advertised in the Fact local newspaper on June 12th. Under the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act passed by Congress in early March, Texas schools were eligible to receive about $12.4 billion under ESSER III. Under that act, 90% of those funds sent to the state, or $11.2 billion, must be given to local school districts by TEA based on their share of Title I Part A grants in the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Districts are required to expend a minimum of 20% on evidence-based interventions that respond to the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of students, and particularly the groups of students disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Districts are also required to engage stakeholders and provide the opportunity for them to provide input in the development of our spending plan. We gathered input from the various stakeholder groups by using a survey, and at this time I will turn it over to Mr. Redden to go through the district's stakeholder engagement plan and survey results.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. The ESSER III allocations were released on April 28th, and initial information about the planning requirement were communicated to federal programs personnel the next morning. By May 5th, we had enough information available to inform principals about the grant, and after meeting with the principals, we began the process of implementing the grant planning requirements. The planning requirements that we must complete before we submit include gathering feedback, as Mrs. Kelly said, from a list of stakeholders identified by the U.S. Department of Education as needing to provide feedback to our plan to address learning loss. We also were required to conduct a public hearing to gather additional feedback from stakeholders, which is the purpose of tonight's hearing. We are required to develop draft plans for both addressing learning loss and for the safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. We're going to present those two plans to the Board of Trustees in July for additional feedback, and then we will submit the grant on July 28th and post the plans on the district website. As part of the grant planning requirements included, they include gathering feedback from stakeholder groups, as we mentioned before, and these groups were specialized. They were articulated in the program requirements. It's a bit unusual. Normally they talk about gathering feedback, but this time they were very specific. So by mid-May, we have enough information to begin gathering the feedback from the students and from other stakeholders. So feedback included making direct contact with 15 additional specialized stakeholders who support the homeless, students served through special education, students with disabilities, and students identified as English learners. And the results of the stakeholder survey are included on the next slide. More than 1,000 parents, educators, outside stakeholders, along with more than 500 students responded to the stakeholder survey. Respondents were asked to rank the top priorities on which they felt the district should focus, what extended day programs we should consider as part of our planning, and what supports we needed to address in order to look at the learning loss of our students with disabilities. Students were asked to identify the time they would be most likely to participate in extended learning opportunities and to a question related to their social, emotional, and mental health needs as a result of COVID-19. Nearly half of the students who completed the survey indicated they would be interested in receiving support with the social, emotional, and mental health needs. As you can see on this slide, the top 4 highest priority stakeholders identified for the use of ESSER III funds were addressing learning loss due to COVID-19, addressing the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students and staff due to COVID-19, addressing the needs of students in special programs or circumstances, and improving student attendance. Extended day programs stakeholders identified for us to consider in our planning included embedded tutoring during the school day, after-school programs such as Boys and Girls Clubs in communities and schools, before or after-school tutoring, and summer learning opportunities. Students identified being offered classes or tutoring during the school day as their top choice for extended learning. Stakeholders identified supports needed to address the learning loss of students with disabilities in the following rank order: providing support to campus implement the services due for special populations, providing specialized training to teachers and staff, providing direct support to parents, and providing training to parents. At this time, Mrs. Kelly will return to go over the federal funds related to the COVID response.
So districts are funded based on weighted average daily attendance of students enrolled. So last school year, when our schools closed, the state held the district harmless for the loss of funding by utilizing the ESSER $1. Basically, we applied for $2,046,000, and then the state took away the local and state dollars. But they did hold us harmless for the loss of funding after closing school last school year. The availability of ESSER II and ESSER III dollars was at the forefront of the 87th legislative session. There was a significant amount of discussion and pressure from education groups to flow these dollars directly to school districts. We heard from the comptroller's office that we could expect ESSER III to flow to us, and that the announcement would come before the state decided what to do with the ESSER II dollars. We were anticipating that ESSER II would be supplanted by the state like they did with ESSER I, and determined in a special session. In early May, we received notification that Brazosport ISD would be entitled to $21,145,685. These dollars will be supplemental dollars used to close the academic and social emotional learning gaps, as well as ensure continuity of services for loss of funding related to loss of enrollment. The state has provided a tremendous amount of flexibility on the use of these dollars. Without a special session needed, the state announced earlier this month that they will also be distributing ESSER II dollars. Brazosport ISD is entitled to $9,115,415, of which the revenue hold harmless for the current 2021 school year will be deducted. That estimated amount for Brazosport ISD is about $4.5 million, which would leave about $5 million of ESSER II money that would be supplemental for us to distribute. At a minimum, 20% has to be spent on interventions, and we will more than satisfy this requirement as $5.8 million has already been allocated to campuses based on the number of economically disadvantaged students that each campus serves. Each campus receives $750 per ECOD student, and the campus teams are planning to utilize those dollars to respond to identified needs and in alignment with their campus improvement plan. Then, in alignment with District Goal, BISD will recruit and retain highly effective staff. The compensation plan that Ms. Kirshner will present later will include a 2% retention stipend for all employees. This is a one-time retention stipend that, if approved, will be covered from ESSER III funds. The Curriculum and Instruction Department are evaluating curricular needs and response strategies in alignment with the curriculum audit and the district improvement plan. We are currently allocating $1 million, and we anticipate the continued need for evaluation as we move through the next 2 years and the additional needs are identified. The current behavior support team will be funded from ESSER III. This is an allowable use of the dollars and helps ensure that we can continue those supports in response to social emotional needs of students as our general fund is faced with revenue shortfalls and a projected deficit. The special education supports will be added to meet the increased number of students needing services. Currently, we've identified 10 teachers and 1.5 paras for special education supports over 2 years. Then we are allowed to charge pre-award costs for expenditures that the district incurred from the onset of the pandemic in March of 2020 to the time the grant funds are applied for. Our spending plan will include $450,000 to cover misters, thermal cameras, shields, and other PPE supplies that were purchased for the current 2021 school year. It will also include $250,000 for PPE supplies that will be needed for the upcoming 21-22 school year. At over $21 million, ESSER III is the largest federal grant Brazosport ISD has ever received. Administration is committed to maximizing these dollars to have the greatest impact on student achievement. We will continue to utilize these funds interchangeably with available general fund dollars to respond to learning loss and ensure continuity of educational services. As a reminder, ESSER III is a temporary funding source, and the spending plan should be developed to avoid a funding cliff. This is a public hearing, so I'll be happy to answer any questions or take any comments from the board or from the audience.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. Are these, the spending plan, are those, a mix, I assume, of new spending and replacement spending, or, for stuff that we already were planning to do, this will help fund that, but there's also some additional spend in there?
Correct. There is no requirement that they all be used for supplemental services. We are allowed to supplant current services with these dollars. And so our plan will be a combination of the two, considering the general fund budget deficit that we're working with.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? From the audience? All right. Hearing none, then we will close the public hearing. Thank you, ma'am. Next item we have on our agenda are reports. Report 13A is the bond planning and construction update. It's a very dapper Mr. Alex Gournay.
Keep it up, this is the second month meeting in a row, you're like A or B. Good job.
Good evening. In accordance with Board Policy CB Local, it is my pleasure to present the 2014-2019 Planning and Construction Bond Update. For the 2014 bond, we're at approximately 83.31% completed. For the 2019 bond, we're approximately 56.21% completed or in progress. This slide shows the current bond project timelines. Some of you came to see the new Brazosport CTE building earlier this evening and heard lots of great compliments and comments about the building. This is a current front entry view that shows the new name that was put on the building last week. This is the conference room that's inside the administration area. The next few slides are some of the graphics that are throughout the building. This is in the first floor corridor, and this is in the rockets lab, and this is also in the back of the rockets lab. This is another couple of in the first floor corridor. This is also in the first floor, over by the welding labs. This is in the second floor, where the business labs are. And this is in the second floor where health science is. And this is the vet tech labs, and at the main entry in the atrium. This is the most recent view, aerial view of the main campus. It continues to move along very well and on schedule. This is the main entry looking from the second floor. This is the exterior view of the auditorium area, and this is the exterior view of the student entry area that is from the main parking lot. This is inside the auditorium, standing at the back of the auditorium looking towards the stage. And this is the life skills room. This is a typical corridor in the administration area. You can see that the drywall and the first coat of primer has gone on the walls. It's moving along very well. We should have air in this building very, very soon. Probably within the next couple of weeks.
Are there going to be more graphics on those walls, or is it going to have a different finish? Do you know, just off the top?
That's just, this is in the office corridors,
Okay.
and it'll just be painted, but but that's just the primer finish on it.
It makes me want to go back to school. Exciting.
Principal's office. Sorry.
This is on the, looking from the second floor down into the dining commons. And this is looking, from the second floor, looking down the learning stairs towards the commons as well. And this is on the second floor, looking towards the front entry. This is a typical corridor on the third floor. And this is on the third floor of the front entry, looking towards the outside. This is the media center. And this is the new driveway that was recently poured that cuts through the main parking lot, which in the past has been asphalt, and it is now concrete all the way through. That ties into the back road. And this is the new bus lane, the new permanent bus lane, which will be finished before school starts. It's on the far east end of the main parking lot. Now we'll go to the Brazosport Ninth Grade Center. We're doing some renovations there for a new security vestibule. The main reception area has moved closer to the front doors, and which the new main reception area is right there at that opening. And this is where the old reception area was that has been filled in, and that will be painted. We're also doing some minor work in the library on the second floor. This is the back in the office area of the Ninth Grade Center. At the Brazosport Baseball, this is the press box has been demoed, and looking over towards the storage part of the building that has also been demoed as well. At the Brazosport Tennis Courts, this is the pad for the new field house. And in the Technology and Resource Center, which is the old CTE building, demolition has been moving along very well. There is a lot of concrete block walls throughout the inside of that building, and it has been cleared out. There's only going to be, I think it's just one long concrete block wall that remains. That's another view of it. It's really opened up that building. You never realize how big it is until you see it like this. Over at Lake Jackson Intermediate, which starts our summer 21 projects, this is the computer lab renovations. This is the home ec lab. And at Clute Intermediate, this is a view of the stacking lane work that's going on, and you can see behind the old gym, the old shop building, which has been demolished to make way for the stacking lane. Also at Clute Intermediate is the new stage curtain work that is going in. That campus currently, or never has had a stage curtain. And also at Clute is the woodshop office demo. And at Freeport Intermediate, this is the underground electrical work that is going out towards the new bus parking facility. And this is a view of the dirt work that's going on at the satellite bus transportation facility. And then this is the detention pond for the bus parking, as well as for the athletic stadium that we're doing over there. Also at Freeport, we're doing the restroom wall tiles throughout the building and doing renovation work in the home ec lab. And at Boydell Elementary, we are, if you recall, that when that school was built, we did not do the vinyl wall coverings in the corridors and in the classrooms, and we are doing that now. And they have prepped the walls for the installation of the new wall covering once it arrives. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Alex, just out of curiosity, is the back road, I know it's gonna be redone, is it gonna be done in concrete or will it be done in asphalt?
We don't know that yet.
Concrete?
Well, we don't know the exact budget of it yet, and we have to determine, you know, once
Concrete?
if I have my vote, and then if Rebecca gives us enough money, it would be concrete.
Make it happen. It's gonna be concrete.
And I would like it to be 4 lanes with a curb and gutters.
I agree.
You know, it used to be a dirt road, then we made it asphalt, and now it's what it is, and it's worse than it ever
Dirt
was.
was probably better than asphalt.
Well, they do a real good job keeping up with it
Yeah.
during school. It's kind of, we had so much rain
Oh, yeah, yeah.
recently, and then school's out, so. But I've driven on it several times today, and they need to come do a little bit of grading, but they've been real responsive on it.
I just hope, you know, I hope our financial folks can find the, wherewithal to finance that, done concrete. If we have enough. I'll give up my salary for it.
Yeah.
It's not gonna get you very far.
Whole board will donate salary.
I'll get you 2 pieces of gravel.
Some rebar.
other
Very good.
comments or questions from Mr. Allen?
C2 building was beautiful, good job.
Very proud of it.
Sure wish you put air conditioning in that IT room, it'd be a whole lot nicer.
Monty doesn't like air
Yeah,
conditioning.
okay, I guess. He doesn't need it for his stuff, does he?
A good hot server is good.
Yeah.
I am so excited about our CTE building.
It's awesome.
If those kids can't get excited, then I don't know what we can do for them.
I think they will.
It's beautiful.
You know, when there's 2,500 people walking that building over there, and if there's, not all of them are gonna find something they want in that building. If they can't find something in the CTE building, then, we need to work on it.
All right,
Thank you very
thank you,
much.
sir. Next item we have is, reports 13B, Texas Association of School Boards Staffing Audit Report. Ms. Kirschner.
All right, good evening. I have to add how nice it is to be back in the boardroom.
Yeah.
So nice.
In accordance with district goal, the ISD will exercise fiscal responsibility to ensure financial strength and provide the resources to equip and maintain quality facilities and educational programming. It is my pleasure to present results of the staffing audit completed by the Texas Association of School Boards. Before we get started, I'd like to share the process that TASB utilizes while conducting the staffing review process. Data collection was completed and submitted to TASB and compared to peer district and benchmark data. TASB then provided feedback and recommendations related to personnel staffing at Brazosport ISD. The following districts were utilized as the peer comparison group to assess benchmarking standards. These peer comparison districts were selected on the basis of enrollment, student demographics, academic performance, and funding level. School district data for benchmarking was obtained from the most recent Teen Standard Report and the TABOR report. In the next several slides, I will share findings with you from the non-campus staffing review, and I will share areas that have been identified for reduction through attrition based on staffing ratios and departmental needs. The first area we'll discuss is curriculum, instruction, and student services. The district is staffed with 32 FTEs compared to the TASB benchmark average of 31.2. The district has 2.6 staff per 1,000 students compared to the TASB benchmark average of 2.4. Evaluation for roles should be based on the district's strategic plan and staffing allocation for roles supporting curriculum, instruction, and student services, which can be adjusted within the current allocation. Through attrition, we have reduced a coordinator of language acquisition. Still focusing on curriculum, instruction, and student services, TASB highlighted a variance in the number of instructional coaches at BISD. The district staffed 8 compared to the TASB benchmark average of 13.5. This is 0.7 per 1,000 students compared to 1.1 per 1,000 students in benchmark data. Overall, the district's curriculum and instruction department is staffed at 32 compared to the TASB benchmark average of 31.2. The additional instructional coach positions would help reduce the variance in this specific role, but would place the district further above peer district average for the entire department collectively. I would like to add that through the process of identifying learning gaps for the 2021 school year, many campuses have requested, with support from Mr. Yoza's department, the addition of content specialists to support their instructional goals on their campus. These positions are being added and funded through federal ESSER dollars. For custodial services, TASB has outlined the following information. The APPA benchmark is 1 custodian per 19,000 cleanable square feet. The district is currently staffed at 1 custodian per 24,908 cleanable square feet, which is right in target with the benchmark ratio set by the district at 1 custodian per 25,000 cleanable square feet. This staffing ratio was set based on a previous custodial staffing analysis that was conducted by the district. The custodial manager has been identified as a reduction within custodial services. This department is led by the maintenance director, assistant director, and a custodial coordinator. Child and nutrition efficiency is measured by meals per labor hour. TASB has identified the following information for child nutrition. The efficiency meals per labor hour target is 70%. The secondary campus efficiency average is 84% meals per labor hour, and the elementary is 91%. Since January 2021, child nutrition has absorbed 7 positions through attrition. These averages reflect the 7 positions that have been reduced. In regards to technology, the district employs 22.5 staff compared to the TASB benchmark average of 14.9. This is 1.9 per 1,000 students compared to the TASB benchmark average of 1.2. Of the 22.5 staff, this total includes 16 computer technicians compared to the TASB benchmark average of 7.3. The technology department has identified 3 computer technician reductions. Safety and security remains a priority at Brazosport ISD, and staffing decisions vary greatly from district to district. Based on the comparison group, TASB has provided the following information. The district staffs 2.5 employees per 1,000 students, compared to the benchmark average of 0.5. Peer districts range from 1 to 1.4 staff per 1,000 students. Not included in this comparison is the 224 overtime hours per officer, which equates to approximately an additional 4 FTEs. Through attrition, our police department at Brazosport ISD has reduced 1 police officer. In regards to business services and human resources, the following information was provided by TASB. Business services is staffed with 9 FTEs compared to the TASB benchmark average of 11.2. Human resources is staffed with 5 FTEs compared to the TASB benchmark average of 5.7. No recommendations have been made for business services and human resources at this time. Through attrition, human resources has reduced 1 HR coordinator. Looking ahead to the 21-22 budget, the identified reductions we just went over are, as outlined, decreases the general fund budget by $396,165 in total. Moving on to the campus staffing review. The districts shown here were the districts that were utilized for comparison groups to assess benchmarking standards for our campus staffing review. And on to the findings. We'll start with our assistant principal. The benchmark is 1 assistant principal per 450 students. The BIC staffing model is identified as 1 FTE for an elementary school with greater than 300 students and 1 FTE in increments of 250 students for secondary campuses. The district has identified 4 reductions, with 3 of those coming from the most recent program change approved, which are the Lighthouse Learning Center, Brazos Success Academy, Elizabeth Ney, and additionally the assistant principal at Stephen F. Austin Elementary. On the next 2 slides, I will share information regarding our counselor staffing. We'll start with our secondary counselors, and the benchmark is 1 counselor per 350 students, which is also the BIC staffing model for secondary academic counselors. The addition of the LPCs and CTE counselors does create a variance in the staffing allocation. However, social and emotional support and college and career military readiness continues to be a high priority within Brazosport ISD. For our elementary counselors, the TASB benchmark is 1 counselor per 350 students for each elementary school. Brazosport ISD elementary campuses are staffed with 1 counselor for campuses with an enrollment greater than 200 students. While the BIC staffing model is greater than the TASB recommendation, communities and school case managers do provide additional support to Velasco, AUG, SFA, and Freeport Elementary. Another area outlined within the TASB staffing audit is our library staff throughout the district. The district employs 1.8 library staff per 1,000 students, compared to the TASB benchmark average of 1.5. The district staffs 1 librarian for campuses with enrollment greater than 250. Our current allocation is greater than the benchmark data,
for library staff due to the recent addition of elementary library paraprofessionals to support librarians who also serve as campus technology reps. One reduction has been identified within the library staff, and that's one librarian. However, a supplemental library para was added to that campus along with the shared librarian from a nearby campus. Regarding educational aids, the TASB benchmark is 13.7 educational aids per 1,000 students. The secondary benchmark is 55, and BISD employs 63 paraprofessionals on our secondary campuses. And the elementary benchmark is 103, while BISD employs 133.5 paraprofessionals on our campuses. You'll see that I have outlined the BISD staffing model for paraprofessionals for elementary and secondary. For elementary, there's 2 general purpose paras, bilingual staff at 1 bilingual para for every 50 bilingual students. For our non-bilingual campuses, the campus receives 1 ESL paraprofessional. Pre-K, of course, is staffed at 1 to 11, along with our pre-K teachers, and then SPED staffing ratio is 1 paraprofessional to 20. However, that does vary based on individualized educational planning. For secondary, the ESL ratio is exactly the same as elementary, and SPED likewise. Total reduction for 21-22 within our paraprofessionals is 23.5 that have been reduced through attrition and or funding changes, with about 60% of those coming from our elementary campus. The following information outlines benchmark staffing data for special education teachers. The state average is 1 teacher per 15 special education students. At the time of this audit, TASB provided the current average is approximately 1 teacher per 10.2 students. You'll see that the BISD staffing model is set in line with that of the state average. However, that does vary based on the IEPs for the students on the campuses, so there is some variance there. After evaluation of special education staffing needs, we had a net add of 3 special education teachers to our existing staffing, which will actually be funded by ESSER. Additionally, 6 special education teachers were reduced from the general fund that will also be funded by ESSER, totaling approximately $687,000. This slide outlines the benchmark information and staffing models for assessment staff. The TASB staffing audit considers LSSPs, DIACs, and speech staff as like positions, therefore groups them under one umbrella of assessment staff. The benchmark caseload for LSSPs, according to TASB and DIACs, is 1 staff per 80 to 85 students. The benchmark caseload for speech staff is 1 speech professional to 45 to 50 students. The BISD staffing model varies from the TASB benchmark and is actually based on role expectations within the district and is set utilizing national standards. So the staffing ratio that's utilized by our special education department is 1 LSSP to 150 special education students, and for every 50 to 80 cases for our DIACs at the elementary level, there's 1 DIAC, and then for every 80 to 100 at the secondary level, there's 1 DIAC. And then our speech staff ratio is set at 1 to 50. However, is increased if there's a speech assistant that's assigned to work the speech therapist. As we move to teacher staffing, I want to share this chart which shows the decrease in enrollment and an increase in teachers over the previous years. The orange line reflects student enrollment, while the blue line reflects teaching positions. Over a 5-year period, we have decreased approximately 1,000 students, and over the last 3 years, we have decreased approximately 880 students. The following staffing model is what was utilized during our recent staffing review meetings in preparation of the 21-22 budget year. For our core content areas, elementaries are staffed with 1 teacher for every 22 students, and secondary, 1 to 24, with the middle school and intermediate planning with 5 sections, and the high school planning with 6 sections. Our ESL staffing for our non-bilingual campuses is 1 ESL teacher to every 80 students, and does result in ESL teachers being shared amongst campuses. The TASB recommendation did include a staffing
attrition and utilization of ESSER, we have reduced 54 teaching positions, which includes 5 ESL teachers. Looking ahead to 21-22, the total reductions identified within the campus staffing review total approximately $4.8 million. This was for report only. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Tracy?
So, I think I understand that we're we take this benchmark and we try to hit most of those in the different departments. Any kickback or red flags from any one particular department that doesn't really think that it's advantageous to try to get to that benchmark?
No, I mean, I would say how we implemented the staffing review is Ms. Kelly and we led the staffing review with TASB and provided all the information in. And so we were really utilizing this and when we sat with all of our principals and departments to look at their staff. Most of our principals, I would say, focusing on the campus is really understood because they've also seen a decrease in their enrollment. A lot of the ads that we've seen this year that we were fortunate to see that we might have had different conversations is that we have the utilization of the ESSER dollars. So those needs that the campuses are identifying are still being met by those needs.
Have we seen a increase in the need for the utilization of our LSSPs?
I would say that it's very difficult for us to even meet the need that we have now with our current staff. It's a very difficult position to fill. I'm sure Ms. Burlow's in the audience nodding her head. Every district throughout the entire state has a shortage of LSSPs, and we do find ourselves, contracting those services to support our student needs.
I've just do visit with folks. A lot of folks, teachers in the classroom, laud what those folks are doing and help the situations, and so hopefully we are able to do the best we can to staff what we have, and if we need more, then maybe find a way to do that too.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Atkins?
Well, this is a lot of data that we got calculated. So,
I second that.
one of the things that jumped out at me is the benchmarking and there's two different groups of districts.
I can share some insight to that, Mr. Atkins. This staffing audit was completed in 2 separate phases, and with a split in COVID and a split in school year. So the campus data actually utilizes mostly paper data as well as our Teams reports, while the non-campus staffing relies heavily on the salary survey that's conducted by TASB to identify what those positions are in specificity. To compare to districts, so there's one campus that did not complete the staffing analysis, so they were left off. So there's one district, not campus, one district that was different on each of the reviews.
Well, when I look at the first one on page 3, we show 57%, and that was that's the taper report. It's we're a couple of years behind, so it's even higher. But there's we are in this group one of the higher ones, except for Southwest, and then 80%. But all the others seem to be a little lower than us from the economic disadvantage. So I guess that led me to a question: is there any factors that are used as far as the staffing for our schools that have a higher ETOT, kind of like special ed funding, 1 point whatever? Is that looked at, or is that done on a case-by-case basis? Because we've already made these cuts in your budget proposal. So that's the thing that we need to make sure we look at.
Those campuses with the use of title and comp ed dollars, and so the positions funded with those
dollars were not included in the staffing allocation. So they receive additional money to fund additional positions, to provide additional support to the ECOD students. And so this is really focusing on core services, not services provided to economically disadvantaged that use title or compet dollars. Thank you. And there are variables. I'll just add, I mean, picking the peer districts was kind of the hardest thing that we had to do, but we have to have a peer district to create those benchmarks. And so, you know, as we have the data and we compare it to our current staffing models, we understand there's going to be some variables. And some of those we're okay with. When we make safety and security a top priority, we're going to fund more police officers. And when we have social emotional needs for our students and we choose to fund LPCs, we're going to have lower ratios than taxi, and we're okay with that.
Well, also notice that special ed is 10.2. I think that's a little low from the last numbers that I remember. So anyway, I understand we have to have a snapshot at some point, but it's still making sure that you know, I understand what we're really looking at. So we talked about the instructional coaches versus the content specialists, and I guess a lot of, apparently, the schools or principals are looking for the content specialists, and don't they kind of provide a similar role from that standpoint?
They provide a similar role.
That's
Mr.
probably-
Yost, if you want to jump in, feel free to come up. But Mr. Yost worked with one of our campuses to pilot a content specialist, which does have a lot of overlapping responsibilities with our instructional coaches. And so that pilot was kind of shared with all the principals, and many of them have wanted to utilize some of their ESSER dollars to look for some of those specific positions that they too could have on their campus versus how our current coaches are spread throughout the district.
I would just add one thing. Do I need to be on the mic?
Yeah.
Or? Yeah. The only other major difference that I would point out is that the campus specialists are going to be on the campus org, which means for budget purposes they're considered campus personnel, whereas the instructional coaches are part of the central office personnel. So they really become campus-directed people with a little bit of oversight by our department to ensure we have I wish Brian was here to feed me the right words, but continuity of services, continuity, and reduce random variation. Make sure he knows I was channeling my inner Brian. I think that distinction is pretty important, and they're content specific. So, for example, like B-Wood's adding a math and an English support because they have the most needs in Algebra 1 and English based on STAR data. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Yost.
Well, I know we're not there yet, but just the custodial services, as we have our new CTE building, and we're going to have the new, much larger high school, apparently.
Yeah.
3 floors, you know, so that's going to have to be taken to look at a little bit later. But when on the child nutrition on page 8, you said you indicated that target efficiency is like 70% per meals per labor hour. What a kind of interesting mouthful. But you know, even when we reduce the 7 specialists, I guess, to attrition, what number are we at now? Do we know?
Here, I'll get back to that slide real quick.
So
Or is the 8491 with the reduction?
That is with the reduction, yes.
Oh.
All these numbers were post-reduction, correct? All of our ratios, correct?
No, the
No,
child
that's what
nutrition
the-
was the only one that was post.
All right, so all the other ones, okay.
Yeah.
That's why, I know you noted that once, but I didn't
Yeah,
know.
I noted it for that
Okay.
one class,
Okay.
because that one was different.
And so it ranges. I mean, Brazosport High School serves 12 meals per labor hour. And this isn't how many meals they can serve, you know, going through the line. This is truly the total number of labor hours that the Brazosport High School kitchen has, divided by the number of meals that they serve. And so Brazosport High School has 12, and Brazoswood High School has 17. Clute has 18. And so they take that number of the actual meals per labor hour and divide it by the TASB proposed meals per labor hour benchmark, which is 18 for secondary and 22 per elementary. So when you do that math, you get an efficiency calculation. and that efficiency calculation is 70 meals per labor hour. And so the average for our secondary campuses are at 94. Some are greater than 70, some are greater than 100 actually, but it averages out to 84, and elementary is 91. And so we meet the current TASB efficiency calculation.
These are the same people that came up with the new long division.
Perhaps. So, and child nutrition it's been a challenging year. As you know, when we closed our schools last year, we paid all of our child nutrition employees, and we didn't serve a single meal. So definitely wasn't a great time to create or to do a staffing audit when we didn't have normal meal service. And so we had to make some adjustments in the current year, which we know, again, was an unusual year because we fed all kids free. And so she has definitely created efficiencies to save money, to maximize revenue. You see on a monthly basis her financial statements, and she's been losing money. The general fund for the first time ever had to, keep her program whole last year, but she is projected to turn a profit this year and potentially pay the general fund some indirect cost rates. I definitely applaud her continued efforts to make adjustments and pivot to serve our students as efficiently as possible.
That's why I keep asking you that question.
I wanna go back to the custodial deal, and this is I'm assuming like the new CTE building just itself is gonna create a need for increased custodial service there. I mean, with all the different labs and things that they're gonna have to clean around and things,
And that's one conversation we've had with our maintenance and custodial department. And with Ken, and we've talked about some of his campuses are overstaffed and have additional staff that he will be able to leverage and to fill some of these other needs at our campuses. But as we move forward, we will continue to evaluate that. But also our new schools are easier to maintain than that of our older facilities. So there's also some efficiencies that we'll have there.
but there's still,
Still got potties.
there's still people things to do.
Sure.
Yes.
Definitely.
Well, the kids are gonna be so proud of it, they're gonna clean it up themselves.
Take care of it.
No kidding.
We'll put you in charge of that department. Well, under police and security, it looks like we're pretty high, so I guess the question would be looking at, police versus the safety specialist type situation, but that's, we can go on from that, so anyway. But like you say, the different comparison on page 15, I understand what you're saying now as far as the campus staffing. Again, it would be interesting to see, and I can go back and get some of these, under the campus ones, the ECOD and the same comparison. We compare on the non-campus, but when we get to the campus, we were just looking at, student enrollment type arrangement, which, again, that's the factor for the ECOD still is in my mind, so it won't go away. So, page 18, when we talked about estimated 21-22 enrollment, I didn't have my calculator, so I couldn't add all that up. Do we know what are we projecting for that?
What slide are you, I'm sorry.
Page 18.
Is that the graph?
No.
Projected enrollment for secondary.
Secondary.
Oh.
Secondary.
It's under secondary councils, but it just happened to have enrollment that caught my
Right,
attention.
right.
So my question has nothing to do with that slide.
Yeah, but
Oh, you're just looking at the
enrollment, the projected enrollment would be, those numbers are based on current students moving up. And
Moving
so
up.
it's the same, it doesn't have any projected increases, that's just projected the same number of kids we have in seats today moving up to the next grade.
Okay.
It doesn't take into consideration anybody moving in or anybody leaving, so.
Yeah, and this is just secondary anyway, but
Right.
it did catch my attention. So, let me ask a semi-related question. On our pre-K and K enrollment that we have to push on now, I guess, to try to get, do we see an increase?
I would say, Claire, you can add, but I do know that I have principals coming to me now because their enrollment numbers are a lot higher at this date, this time compared to last year, so our families are coming out earlier. So one could believe that we're gonna have more, but they are seeing more families and numbers now in May and June than what we have seen in the past,
Good,
which is a
good.
good sign.
Good.
Sorry, Claire.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I need to look at this, the educational aids that we're talking about, we, lost a lot of paraprofessionals, and I hate to say this in the way it's gonna come out, is that, they're the cheapest labor that we have.
Yeah.
And they play such an important role.
They do.
It's kinda interesting that the numbers, I'm astounded every year on the salary that they make what they don't make, from what they do. It's kinda like, so, I guess, in general, my question is that, I see the benchmarking and all that kind of stuff, but is that the best place to make the cuts?
I think I can just add really fast, quick, I'm sorry, is that they're not, the 23.5 is what you see as a reduction to our general fund. A lot of our paraprofessionals have been moved to alternate funding, so they actually haven't gone away, right? So it may be title funding or state comp ed, we've had some additional special education paraprofessionals, so our existing staff has moved in to other roles. So I would say most of those staff are all being utilized, maybe with the exception of, I'm gonna give you an estimate of about maybe 8 or so that are truly reduced.
Yeah, well,
The rest
I understand that.
Well, and some of those were the
Rebecca's
short-term.
last slide, always, it's the thing that I keep harping on is that, hey, this money is here, it's granted, but it does go away.
It's 2-year money, yeah.
2
I'll
years
just
with
add that
a year overlap, so.
The reductions in the para were not a result of adjusting our local ratios to any TASB benchmark ratio for paraprofessionals.
Okay.
We left our current paraprofessional ratios the same and only made adjustments for loss of enrollment at those campuses. So for example, pre-K, we staff 1 to 11, and so once they go over 11 students in a class, they get a paraprofessional. Well, with the loss of pre-K enrollment, we didn't need as many paraprofessionals. So we didn't readjust our local staffing ratios for paras to meet and match the TASB benchmark. We just showed that for comparison purposes.
Sounds like we may be back in the business of getting more.
Hopefully. That means increased enrollment, so.
And my question I always have is, when we get to the teachers and the ESL, our certification process, I assume that the numbers haven't grown in that, getting that certification, or have they, as far as teachers being ESL certified? Because I know it's a difficult step.
A lot more of our graduates from the university level are coming out their certification with the attachment, because that's a part of the university requirement.
Oh, good.
So that's very helpful when you're hiring, new teachers straight from the university, but that's not necessarily the case for ACP or, experienced hires.
Okay, I'll quit for now. I'll be back.
Can I ask, it's kind of semi-related. I know that we started our program where we were providing compensation to student teachers. Have any of those shown interest in staying in our district that we know of?
All of them have applied.
Okay, good.
And several of them have been hired, and I will add that in a board update.
Okay.
We're still working through recommendations, so.
Good
yes.
deal, Lucy. That's good.
Yes, great.
Any other questions, comments?
I just want to provide a thanks to Ms. Kelly. Her and I have partnered on this for about a little over a year now, so for the support in getting this together for you guys.
Good information.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Next item we have under our reports is report breaking C, the 21-22 budget assumptions and anticipated expenditures. Very busy, Ms. Wright.
Busy month. All right, good evening. In accordance with Board Policy CE and Sections 44.002 through 006 of the Texas Education Code, tonight I'll present an update on the 2022 preliminary budget assumptions and anticipated expenditures. We have received preliminary estimated 2021 taxable values from the Brazosport County Appraisal District. M&O values are at $10.4 billion, which is a 9.5% increase from 2020 taxable values. Certified values are going to be less, as the appraisal district has indicated there are a record number of appeals. The actual increase will impact the tax rate calculation, so the rate is under review and will be finalized the first week in August. With this increase in value and a decrease in enrollment, I fully anticipate that we will have an increase in the amount that we pay back to the state under the recapture system. This chart shows the district's revenue trends in blue compared to the expenditures in red.
In the current year, 2021, we have an adopted budget deficit of $4.6 million. Revenues are projected to be $112.4 million for 2022, which there is still a significant amount of uncertainty in this estimate, but our current budget expenditures exceed $128 million. We have been working to make reductions based on staffing allocations for loss of enrollment. To balance the budget at a break-even point, we would need to reduce spending by $16 million. We are in a strong financial position to be able to make these adjustments over a multi-year period. We've also received the ESSER II and ESSER III funding that can be used to sustain highly effective support, and that also gives us time to evaluate future enrollment trends. The green line on the chart represents our fund balance, while the purple line is the TEA optimum fund balance level. While we currently exceed the optimum level, based on 2022 projections, if we didn't make the adjustments to spending, you could see we would fall below that optimum level in the 22-23 year. To ensure that we remain in a strong financial position, we targeted $10 to $12 million in reduction through attrition and by utilizing other funding sources. You have in front of you a detailed list of budget assumptions which reflects $9 million in net reductions. We are actually at over $10 million in reductions. However, we prioritize the need to provide a pay increase for teachers to ensure that we remain competitive in recruiting and retaining effective teachers. We are in a very competitive market, and last year we provided a 2% one-time payment without making a permanent increase to the teacher pay schedule. We will begin to fall behind if we don't provide an actual adjustment to the pay scale. So later tonight, Ms. Kirshner will be recommending a compensation plan that provides a 2% increase to the teacher pay scale. So to date, the revenue projections and current net reductions, we are at a $7 million budget deficit. We do budget $3.4 million in contingencies, so assuming we don't utilize those funds, we would have an actual deficit of $3.6 million. We are still about a month out from finalizing the proposed budget and tax rate, so I'll have more information for you in July, and then we'll have the board budget workshop August 2nd. As mentioned, you do have the detailed budget assumption at your table, so I'll just briefly go through a summary. Personnel or payroll reductions are as follows. A reduction of $2,150,000 that was budgeted for a one-time employee compensation increase to the current 2021 school year. Personnel reductions total $7.5 million, with $4.43 of that from campus staffing allocation adjustments due to loss of enrollment. $1.48 million reduced by utilizing other available funding sources. $577,000 for special education reductions, but you can note here that there were additional SPED support that were needed, and those have been added with the ESSER III funding. A reduction of $625,000 for the 50 temporary COVID paraprofessional positions that we added for the current 2021 school year. And then the administrative reductions total $240,000, and then other reductions $221,000. Personnel is about 86% of our budget, so when we talk about reductions, that's usually where we start. But a lot of work went into departments evaluating their department budgets for spending, and we were able to reduce just over $1 million from those department budgets. Our campus budgets are allocated based on per students, and so with fewer students, our campus budgets were reduced about $50,000. So department reductions briefly are $270,000 for the reduction of the contract with True Life Ministries. We've renegotiated that contract as approved earlier this evening, and the $70,000 contract that we have with them will be funded by ESSER III. Athletic department reductions totaled $97,000. The bulk of that was a reduction in the premium that we pay for the student athletic or student accident insurance. Claims were not as high as the premium, so we negotiated a lower premium. Transportation department reductions that totaled just over $70,000, primarily for, we purchased box trucks with bond dollars, and we previously rented those for extracurricular activities. And then we've got a fairly new yellow bus fleet, and with the purchase of those new buses, we obviously have less repairs and parts that are needed. So utilizing those bond dollars to reduce spending from the general fund. And then supplies and travel from various department budgets were reduced by $137,000. The ST Math program, which is about $51,000 annually, was actually picked up and funded by the state for the next 2 years, so that's a savings. Instructional material allocation, the allotment will cover some of the instructional materials that we had previously been funding from the general fund. A $22,600 reduction for the deaf education co-op as there's fewer students that we're projecting to need to provide services for. And then the implementation costs associated with the reading academies were a one-time cost, so we can reduce that. And then the district's going to utilize the Google survey tool, saving $37,000 on the current Qualtrics survey system. And then with the utilization of online testing, we estimate that we'll save about $36,000 in various printing costs. And there were other various department reductions that was about $192,000. You do have all the details in front of you on personnel and department spending. I think it's about 4 or 5 pages. And so I'll give you guys time to review that, and then I'll be back in front of you in July, and then on August 2nd. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
For the most part, all the new equipment in the CTE building and all the new buildings was included in the bond, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Equipment as well?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the reduction in the athletic insurance cost, but you still provide it.
Yes, sir, we still provide it. We just renegotiated a lower premium based on claims.
Rebecca, when it's all said and done, will you have a separate document that shows ESSER funds and how they were utilized, so we'll see that as well?
Yes, we're actually required to post a simplified spending plan. So I've got a 1-page template that I plan to use on ESSER 3, and we're required to post that to our website after receiving public input on it. So that spending plan will also be back in front of you in July.
Okay. I appreciate the simplified it.
Quoting statute.
I'm sorry, I'm looking here, I just now had a chance to really look at this closely, the graph that you have on page 4.
Yes.
So we're looking at this is our fund balance.
Yes,
Okay.
the green line is.
Oh, that's what okay.
Yes, the green line's our fund balance, and then the purple line is the TEA optimum level, which is about, I calculate based on 3.5 months of $130 million. And so, obviously, as our budget spending adjusts, that optimum will also adjust. But, you can see at our current spending levels with projected revenues, the green line will cross the purple line in year 2022 if we don't make adjustments.
Yeah, and this is the good thing for the wide look, which is really good. And but our fund balance, the optimum is, if the legislature keeps fooling with it, we won't have to worry about it.
Well, there's varying opinions on what the optimum level should be.
Well, everybody wants us to give it back.
Yeah.
So I calculated based on TEA's definition of 3.5 months of operating, so. Any other questions?
From the board, it would be interesting to see, just some of the, obviously I know labor's our biggest, but maybe the next like 5 to 10 items that are our biggest expenditure items after that. If we see it that way, always. I know it's buried in there, but.
Like payroll, like categories of payroll?
Yeah, just categories, high level, but the next like 5 to 10.
After
After personnel, take personnel out.
Property insurance.
Yeah, no, I know they are, but
Okay.
I know, but it would be interesting to see those in number form.
Yeah, it's about I think when you factor everything out, utilities, insurance, it comes down to about 4 to 5% of our budget is actually discretionary, non-personnel, non-fixed cost type of items.
And I know we have done a lot in the last bond cycles to strip out as much as we can out of general funds into bonds. But I think that would be, to me, that's the easiest, quickest way to get rid of these, a lot of these general fund expenses, if we can, and put them into some type of continuous bond spending account, $3 to $6 million every, 2 to 5 years, goes a long way in keeping hits to budgets, especially when we're running thin on the $3.5 million, they're on contingency and all that. I would assume most of our unknowns, what ifs, happen that we pull out of contingency are capital-related items. I would assume AC, a roof.
Yeah, we've
boiler,
been utilizing
boiler.
the major maintenance dollars that we have from 2014 and 2019 bond programs to take care of, maintenance-related
Correct.
repairs that do extend the useful life of that asset, because that's what it has to do in order to be able to utilize those bond dollars. And so, we strategically set aside about $200,000 a year out of those bond funds to cover those major maintenance type items. So we do a lot of that now. What's left in the general fund is, gas for our buses, fuel. We can't fund it, but we can buy new buses, and we can buy box trucks, and so we can reduce those.
What about
types of
parts and
items.
equipment, things like that for them? Can that be rolled over into that fund?
Yes. But
That's what I'm talking about. I think there is an opportunity there for us to strip out $2 to $5 million, maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
I give you about 600,000.
No, come on, we can do better.
But I can
find
only
that-
pull, out of those department budgets.
We should be, what I guess I'm saying is, we should be super aggressive with that. If we can, when we start talking about this, our next bond cycle, we really need to be, utilizing that as much as possible, and create some flexibility in that bond, because that's the best, highest use of taxpayer money, because it's one for one, right? We can allocate, like we did with IT, with useful life, all those different things that we did this last time to really maximize the use of taxpayer funds.
I think the biggest
do
challenge that we face with a lot of the, and even if it's spilling over into maintenance as well, even outside of technology, is as you move forward, more often than not, things that we used to could buy a box and capitalize it and say, okay, we own this and we can use bond funds. Now they want to sell it as a subscription service.
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
and again, that's spilling, it used to be that was just technology, now it's spilling over even to the maintenance
Yeah.
type items.
HVAC, preventative maintenance agreement,
Mhm.
those are service agreements.
Yeah. Which won't qualify.
But I can pull out what we're spending in, major repairs and supplies.
I don't need to see the detail on the individual things, but just so that we can have spot look at if there's things that we can maybe think of, or crazy things that you love for us to present to you.
Got it. I'll have that ready by the August second
You'll-
workshop.
maybe
How about
I'm sure
that?
it'll be September.
600,000.
We can find something creative one time, right?
$600,000.
Surely our two heads together. Yeah, athletic capital, obviously, that's all, and band uniforms we've done. So we've done, I'm not saying we've done a great
And we made more
job.
progress in 2019.
Yep, I agree.
When
We
we
did.
did the 2019 bond, we
We
put
put a lot
even
of
more
effort.
money in there.
We put a lot of effort into identifying those costs and those items to, even from a planning standpoint, I know, Mr. Reinhardt can attest to this too, but City of Lake Jackson was really good about that from a future planning for replacing items. They knew every 7 years they were gonna have to replace an AC at one thing, right? So they built that into some contingencies and things like that. And
Especially equipment, heavy equipment,
yeah,
things like that.
fire trucks, things like that we're gonna come to, but I think there's ways for us to help you from a planning perspective for that, from a bond perspective.
Any other comments from Ms. Kelly? From the audience? All right, hearing none, then thank you, ma'am. The next item that we have on our reports is our board committee reports.
I do have a legislative advocacy network meeting on January, June 30th to update from the legislature. So if anything comes out of it, I'll add it up and send it to you. So it'll be interesting to see what TASB comes up with. Also, I guess Danny sent out TASB Board of Directors, Tony Hopkins from Friendswood, I think, known him for a while. I think he's on there now, so I don't know what we have to do. So I like to look into that to see if we can endorse him or whatever they need to do. And thank you for Miss Lita, for me personally, after putting up with all my stuff. So I'm probably the hardest guy to deal with. I acknowledge that, so it's not a problem.
Step one, huh?
And I've already worn 10.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've done my due diligence, but thank you, leader. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Can't believe it's time for you to go. It's always almost June. So, anyway, thank you for all the effort over my years, anyway.
You know, it didn't take her long to start screening. When she saw my number on caller ID, she screened it.
Oh, I see.
She said, he's in trouble now, he needs some help, and I don't have time, but,
Between your IT capabilities.
yeah, my IT capabilities are.
Any other board members? All right. Our next item on our agenda is under action items, 14A, the 21-22 compensation plan. Public comment will be allowed before a vote is taken on each of the following items. So we'll start with item A, the compensation plan. Ms. Kirshner.
Thank you. In alignment with district goals, BIC will recruit, develop, and retain highly effective staff. It is my pleasure to provide a recommendation for the 21-22 compensation plan. Before we move to the salary review details, I want to take a moment to share benefit information regarding TRS Active Care. TRS recently communicated the 21-22 plan year health insurance rates. Like previous years, health insurance premiums have increased. The rates shown will be in place for the 21-22 school year. All other plans, including dental and vision, are in a rate path and will not be increasing. The districts shown above are included in the market comparison for Brazosport ISD. If you recall, the market districts were previously reviewed and adjusted after the 18-19 compensation plan year to ensure BIC was in a competitive pay group to evaluate compensation. In addition to school districts previously shown, TASB also utilizes other market sources for roles that have exact matches in the private sector, and a combination of school market and private sector data is used. For example, positions that this might happen with is a diesel mechanic, an occupational therapist, food service worker, an accountant, to name a few. Above you will see the teacher market comparison for Brazosport ISD teachers. The blue line is the local market median, and the orange line compares BISD teacher salaries in 5-year increments. Brazosport ISD teacher pay is within 95% of market comparison at each step, which is a healthy pay position in an extremely competitive market. If you recall, BIC's salary structure remained consistent with the 1920 structure with the implementation of the lump sum payment, which did not increase base pay. The table shown above is the teacher market comparison with percentages. As shown, the greater difference in pay begins at 15+ years for BIC teachers in comparison to market, with an average salary comparison to market at 95%. Teacher stipends are another factor considered when evaluating compensation in comparison to market data. You will see that of the 12 comparison districts, BIC is at and or leading the way in common teaching stipends. Not shown on this chart is the math science stipend that is provided at secondary level and at $1,750 for intermediate and $3,500 for high school math science teachers. In addition to those stipends, BIC has also included stipends for critical needs in other areas, including CTE. These stipends are not commonly offered. However, when applied to affected teachers, this raises teacher pay when compared to market median as shown on the previous table. In addition to teacher salaries, the TASB salary study compares all other positions within the district as well. On this table, you will see the employee pay to market, pay grade midpoint in comparison to the market group, pay grade minimum to market, and in the last column, the number of benchmark positions that were utilized in this comparison. In the next few slides, I will share the TASB recommendations for Brazosport ISD. Recommendation 1 from TASB reflects midpoint base pay structure realignment to market and 3 teacher placement schedules, which have been created to align with each of the 3 proposed general pay increases or GPI models. Recommendation 2 from TASB includes the selection of a general pay increase to maintain a market position. Teacher GPI is calculated as a percentage of market median salary of $62,250, while non-teacher GPI is calculated as a percentage of pay grade midpoint. In
And recommendation 3 includes additional adjustments that are needed to maintain a logical progression between experience increments on the teacher placement scale for years 2 to 11. Additional adjustments to ensure employees are at least 1% above minimum of their pay grade. Market equity adjustments. And last, provide adjustments to ensure that administrative professionals who must be teacher certified will be paid no less than what a teacher with the same degree and experience level will be paid on a daily rate basis. On the next 3 slides, I will share the approximate costs associated with each of the GPI models, including adjustments from each of the recommendations. Cost Model 1 includes an estimated cost of approximately $1.2 million to provide a 1% increase to midpoint for all BISD employees. Cost Model 2 includes an estimated cost of approximately $2.1 million to provide a 2% increase at midpoint for all Brazosport ISD employees. And last, Cost Model 3 includes an estimated cost of approximately $3 million to provide a 3% increase to all BISD employees. At this time, I would like to present the administration's recommendation. Administration recommends a 2% salary increase to the teacher matrix based on pay grade midpoint. Starting teacher salary of $57,000. A 2% one-time retention stipend based on pay grade midpoint to be applied in lump sum and payable in September of 2021 for all pay grades and teachers. Pay adjustments to address employee variances with pay ranges and market. And last, the approval of the 21-22 compensation plan as presented. The financial impact of the recommendation as presented is $3,450,000, with $1.3 million coming from general funds and the remaining applied to ESSER funding. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding the information presented and or the recommendation made on behalf of administration.
Questions? Are you accepting applications?
Sure, always.
So what'd you say the starting salary would be with the 2% increase?
$57,000.
57.
The 2% increase would provide about $1,250 to every teacher, plus the additional adjustments at steps 2 through 11 for some, but that only increased $1,000 for our starting teachers. $56,000 per year.
The retention stipend, was there any thought given to starting that at a 5-year time frame? One who's been here 5 years started 1%, 1.5% or something, and then, rewarding the teachers that have been here 10, 15 years with a higher percentage, like up to the 2%.
We did not think about it with that logic, but teachers will receive the 2% based on this recommendation. Teachers will receive the 2% base pay increase. In addition, will also receive the 2% retention.
Right, but if you have a brand new teacher starting, they're going to get 10%. 2%. In addition, the starting salary will be increased by 2%, but they'll get a lump sum of 2%.
Right, and that recommendation is consistent with TASB to really ensure that we maintain a healthy pay position in comparison to the market. So districts around us have been more aggressive, some have been less, but with our freeze last year, we didn't have any movement on our pay scale, so we really tried to move them all the same.
But the one-time payment, as we saw in the previous graph, it's not reflected in us keeping up, so,
Right.
Right. When I saw that, I said, okay, I understand that, I don't like lump sums because it gets us behind, but our situation, which we did last year, I understand, so, but, it's kind of like, okay, we're, paying a new teacher 2% and calling retention stipend, so, that won't get us behind as far as, from, the situation, because when you look at the 15-year teacher, there's more of a gap. 20 kind of catches up on the graph, so. Anyway, I just, on that situation, a 5-year, 10-year, 15, 1.5, 2, or something like that, it won't, it's not that much of a savings, but that's not the point.
Well, I
We do
think,
have the retention, the longevity incentives that we provide in those increments starting at 10 years, as well as those teachers, when they meet that threshold, are paid additional stipends for that longevity.
Right, yeah, I understand that.
I'm sorry, but if somebody's been in the classroom 15 years and somebody's been in it 3 years and they get the same pay increase, I have issues with that.
The one-time stipend's the same for everybody, yeah, but the 2%.
But if they're gonna call it a retention, then it's not the same. Because they stay 15 years, the other guy, he's been there 2 years or 3 years.
Yeah, the 2% is different, yeah. So this was kind of since we were not in a financial position to do, we felt a larger than a 2% increase. This is a way to give all teachers and, all employees actually more money, and teachers actually are the only ones getting the percent increase, because they're the ones that we usually compete for from other districts, yeah.
Any other comments? So I'm looking at the insurance for the coming year. So for a teacher who is carrying the insurance load for her family, for his family, the money is pretty much going to all go to the increase in insurance. So they're not really going to see any more on their check. It's just they're not going to see any less because of the increase in insurance.
Unfortunately, at this time, we don't control those rates with TRS Active Care, but as previously shared in a board update, we will be exercising our ability to utilize District of Innovation to find some more competitive health plans for the following year that we could present to our employees for additional options.
Okay.
Yes, we definitely understand and recognize the rising costs that we're facing with active care, and they'll likely continue as districts continue to exit the active care platform.
There's been many years back in the day that the pay increase you got was what covered the insurance premium, and that was it. There was a long term that ran.
That's a lot of industry right now across the
Yeah.
board.
Yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. Any other comments before we take a vote?
We got somebody in the part of the back wants to speak.
Yes, sir.
Need to come up, please, so we can hear you.
My name is Justin Faith. I actually was a teacher in the district, and I recently left to go to Dickinson ISD to pursue an opportunity there. And when you talk about the retention stipends, I'm curious to know why they would be given in the fall rather than in the spring. If you really wanted to retain teachers, you would offer it almost in conjunction with signing a new contract, rather than those people who didn't leave unknowingly that these stipends could be available. And then to further make that point, there was a stipend offered in the spring for people who were going to say that they were going to leave, as opposed to people who were going to stay. And so for me, that's just a little bit of confusion in those terms. If it's really about retention, why wouldn't the funds be used to retain people rather than reward people who stayed, not knowing that there was going to be an opportunity?
I can speak to that quickly. The incentive last year for early resignation was to support our planning efforts in regards to our staffing needs and the reductions we needed in the general fund.
We knew we cut $4.6 million because we're spending $19 million than we're taking in, so that was the purpose for that. Yeah, since we needed to know, and that helped us identify staff to reduce the $4.6 million that we did reduce in staff. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. And to the second point, for the retention incentive is retention stipend, I apologize, is to provide that early so we can provide that to all employees. If employees do exit prior to the full term of their calendar, they would not be eligible for that entire amount. So when we were not providing a salary increase as we have historically for all of our employees. That's a way for us to recognize all the efforts of the employees throughout the district to pay that earlier rather than later.
So, we're using the word retention, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a retention bonus.
Yeah.
It's titled that only, it's a bonus
It's
stipend.
titled that
It's
for
a bonus.
ESSER funded.
It could be a COVID appreciation
Yeah.
bonus.
Name whatever you want.
Yeah, but officially, we'd have to call it a retention
So,
stipend.
with the
Ms. Page, if that
constraints
makes
in the
sense.
general fund budget, we were looking at the best way to utilize the ESSER III funding to provide a compensation increase for our teachers. And so, what is allowable under the use of ESSER III is a retention stipend. And so we're approving or recommending a retention stipend so that we can utilize the ESSER III dollars as the funding source for that, because we are very limited on the amount of general fund revenue that we have available to provide those compensation increases for our staff.
Which we got May 6th.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which was after the February announcement
Yeah.
of the early exit notification.
So what would be the effect of, I know the dollar-wise, 3% is 3.0 versus 2.1 or something like that, but, you know, long-term, I mean, that's a continuing cost, I realize. And instead of 3.4, it would cost us 3.1, but that would be continuing to next year, so, you know, our budget projections, which I haven't looked at, so I need to look at that. As far as, you know, next year's budget, they showed up there, I guess we still got a potential of a deficit.
Yeah, we'll have a on-paper deficit of $7 million, $6.9 million, and we do have the $3.4 million that we build in for contingency, so if we don't use that, it's about a $3.6 million actual deficit that I would project. Based on revenue estimates that I have today, which there's still some uncertainty in, and so.
And for the last several years, contingency hasn't been dug into.
Yeah, we did utilize it this year because we gave the December incentives. Yeah. But historically speaking, no. We haven't. We've utilized probably less than $400,000 of contingency. But it is about 3% of our total budget, so that's a normal amount that we have, you know, for contingency, because the board adopts the budget by functional category, and so it gives us some extra room within those functional categories, so that we don't exceed one of those functions and end up with an audit finding that would impact our first rating. So I am comfortable making a reduction to the amount that we budget in contingency, but I also want to be careful that we don't put ourselves in a situation.
Oh, no, I don't think we need to.
So that's why I'm always transparent in that we've got a on-paper deficit or surplus, and then we've got $3.4 million in contingencies, and what the actual anticipated surplus or deficit for that year is.
No, I think we definitely need to keep that amount of contingency. It's just the fact that historically we've been able to recoup some of the benefits of not having to use it for emergency, whatever, but it is hurricane season.
Correct.
You're talking about 900 carryover if we go 3%, right? For tonight's purposes, I guess, there's a couple of questions. For tonight's purposes, and I'm not necessarily opposed to tiering the stipend, retention, whatever we're going to call it, bonus. For tonight's purposes, I realize we probably need to pass something that's free for budgeting standpoint. Is a dollar figure okay to pass, or what do you need clarity for? If we were to go back and say, hey, what would it look like if we did a 1, 2, 3% deal and incentivize or retain over?
My ESSER application is not due until the end of July, and so we do have the time in July that we could bring forth a different recommendation or consideration for the board. And then we can always amend the application after it's been submitted. And so if exploring other tiered retention stipends is something the board wants us to consider, we can definitely bring back some recommendations.
Again, asking the budget question, is going down a path like that, which I assume we're going to be close to that 3.4 million, either stagger that. We can figure out what the break-even point is on those to get close to that if we go for a 1, 2, 3 situation. Is going to a 3% flat, no stipend, other than the carryover $900K that's additional for next year. That's our bigger risk there, right? If we scrap a stipend and go straight to 3%.
And we would have to sustain that as part of the future year compensation.
You're sustaining 2% already, right? So you're
2%
really
for teachers
Right.
only, yeah. 2%, and then the 2% retention stipend would be applied to all employees, and that would not, which is $2,150,000. And so we're not sustaining that amount. We're only sustaining the 1.1, 1.2 of the cost associated with the 2% pay grade adjustment for pay schedule adjustment for teachers.
It's the additional $600,000 that was a 3% versus the 2% approximately.
So the 2.1 million, which is a 2% model that you'll have on here, that's just for teachers.
On her presentation?
That's for all.
That's for all that was
employees, 2%.
captured. Yes.
Yes, and you'll see if you,
The teacher
if you
That's
look
just
across,
that's
the top, the teachers is about 1.1 for the general pay increase. And then the adjustments associated with the pay scale steps and obtaining greater increments is an additional $103,000 at that model.
And then there's an additional 1.4 million, 1.3 million for the 2% retention bonus.
2.1, which is the ESSER funded for all employees.
That's on,
All
that's
on,
just-
Paid for by ESSER.
paid for by ESSER.
Including teachers.
That's the difference. That's ESSER's the key.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah. Which is why I think was the recommendation, because the ESSER money, we can utilize it the way we want to, but without it creating a long-term,
Commit.
Budget issue.
budget issue.
That would be even more reason to tier it.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna use it for.
We can do it for 1 year.
So I think our recommendation would continue to be the 2% for teachers for salary increases, but we can certainly look at if you want to do something different with the one-time ESSER money based on years of experience
To me, that's the way.
In the district.
in the district for all employees, years of experience. I mean, because this bonus is for all employees.
Across the board.
Across the board, based on years of experience.
But
we can
it already is tiered to a certain degree with
Teachers are with their staff.
Well, their salary, yeah, their salary is
And
salary.
if I can just add,
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead.
Massey,
Thank
if you
you.
don't
Yeah.
mind, is
Yeah.
that, to kind of more complicate the request here, is
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
we're looking at the 2%, that's based off of midpoint. And so we have, employees who are below or greater, below or right at midpoint. Their increase is going to vary, because it's based on midpoint. So for simple math, if you're at $10 versus $15, right, you're gonna get a larger percent increase if you're lower, because it's based on midpoint and not your pay.
Yeah, but
So
we have that every year.
we have, absolutely, we have
Yeah,
that every
so
year,
that's-
because and that's exactly how teachers are done. They're also based on midpoint and not necessarily their step. So you could apply many different factors, to provide, that additional 2% retention stipend. And we'd be happy to explore that.
All right, I feel like we're chasing rabbits. So, we have a recommendation from the administration for the 2% model plus the 2% ESSER compensation across the board. So, we have a recommendation, so what is the will of the board? Do we want to approve just the 2% for the teachers, and then have them go back and take a look at the model as far as tiering it for the ESSER compensation? Because that's what I'm hearing, so. Is that the will of the board before we move forward? Because we have a motion before us we have to deal with, so.
No motion yet, right?
Yeah,
We
we've
said
got a
recommendation.
recommendation.
I'm sorry, recommendation.
Yes.
Not right. We have a recommendation, not a motion.
I'll make a recommendation, or motion.
A motion, okay.
I move that we approve the 2% salary increase to the teacher matrix based on pay grade mix.
And how about the,
That's my motion.
Second.
so we're gonna look
I'll second
back on the
that.
stipend or?
Bring it back.
Yeah, we can bring some
Bring
tiered
back.
options back to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Wait, so, say what, you say we're gonna revisit the
2%
2%.
bonus.
The additional compensation for across the board. We're
That's
gonna
right.
revisit that,
We'll bring back some more tiered options based on years of experience.
because we have more time, according to Ms. Kelly, before that has to be submitted.
I have one comment. I think it would be our recommendation, Scott, that your motion would include bullet 1, 3, and 4, which would be the 2% salary increase to the teacher matrix, implement the pay structure adjustments to align with the market and existing pay grades, and then the pay adjustments to address the employee variances within the pay ranges in the market.
I'll amend my motion.
Those all include or impact general fund. Right.
Okay. So,
I'll amend my motion to include the 2% and then items 3 and 4.
you got that on paper?
Yes, we got it.
Then we need to approve the compensation thing
All right.
also.
The compensation plan includes the 2% one-time retention stipend, so we would bring an amended compensation plan back at the July meeting.
So for right now, the recommendation is the
You need
2%
that?
salary
Well,
increase
yeah, it
and
doesn't
bullet
impact.
points 3 and 4.
It's not included in the
Right.
compensation plan.
And
This way she can do that in her budget.
Scott, in the 2%, and when it comes back, it's not in your amendment now, but I would like for us to, and staff to be sure that, and it says now, but I want to be sure that includes all employees.
Yeah.
Oh, the one-time.
The one-time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, that was- yeah.
That's wrong.
My intention by my motion is only to pass the 2% for teachers tonight plus the other, item 3 and 4, and then come back to next meeting.
And 5, if you don't mind.
And 5.
5 does not include the retention stipend.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Motion as recommended,
Yeah.
excluding the 2% one-time
Fine,
retention.
but to be brought back to our next meeting so that we can consider future and how best to allocate that money.
Okay.
So my question is, are all the board members on board? Do you understand the recommendation? Do you understand what's been presented before we vote?
Yes.
All right, so it has been moved by Scott, it has been seconded by Joe. So unless there are any further questions, then we're gonna put it to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. And all opposed by nay. All right, so that part passes, and then they'll bring it back to us for the remainder of the, I'm just gonna call it the ESSER compensation package.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item that we have on our agenda is 14B, the board policy DNA local update.
The moment you've all been waiting for, teacher appraisal instrument.
Yeah.
So, good evening. In alignment with Board Policy DNA Legal and District Goal 5, Brazosport ISD will recruit, develop, and retain highly effective staff. It is my pleasure to present the following proposed changes to Board Policy DNA Local. Board Policy DNA specifically covers the performance appraisal of teachers. When the state switched from PDOS to T-Test 5 years ago, BISD opted to develop our own appraisal system through the District of Innovation process. The locally developed system, Brazosport Teacher Appraisal System, or BTOS, has been in place ever since. BTOS has been an effective system for us. However, we have encountered some issues using an independent system. Software platforms, training, and implementation supports are all designed around the state-level system, the Texas Teacher Evaluation and Support System, TTES. Additionally, an increasing number of surrounding districts are applying to participate in the Teacher Incentive Allotment System in order to provide teachers with increased compensation. BISD will apply to participate in TIA in the spring of 2022, and having TTES in place will greatly improve the school district's application. TTES is an appraisal system that will support the district's ongoing PLC process by focusing on student results and engaging in dialogue about which teacher actions produce the best student outcomes. Additionally, transitioning to TTES will support our goal to recruit, develop, and retain highly effective staff by allowing us to access quality appraisal software that works seamlessly with our appraisal system, quality professional development for administrators on coaching teachers effectively, and participation in the teacher incentive allotment program in the future. A few other notes. Implementation for T-Test will be very straightforward. All campus administrators and BISD are certified T-Test appraisers, and all of the training material for teaching staff is prepared and ready to implement. The revised policy we're recommending today is TASB's recommended version of DNA Local. At this time, the administration recommends the board approve changes to DNA Local as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions from the board?
So this is deja vu all over.
Deja vu all over again. Tell me about it. Jay and I worked on BTOS together, so.
I heard a song one time said the road goes on forever and the party never ends. That's what it is. Move for approval.
On page
I'll
four,
look for King on the way home.
on page four, which is
The party never ending, or?
All of the above.
the capturing of the DTOS definition here is, there's a pretty good creative writer right here that wrote that.
It's from their website. I can't take credit for that. Like copy and paste, sir.
It's just kind of like, okay, that looks good. So anyway, go ahead, Joe.
No, I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Before we get there, are there any comments or questions from the audience? All right, so it's been moved.
Orange guys, man.
Scratching your head or shaking your head.
Oh.
Sorry.
It's like
Gotta ask a question now.
It's like going to an auction, put your hand down.
Everybody's a comedian. All right, we do have it has been moved by Mr. Reinhardt and seconded by Mr. Atkins. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And all opposed by nay. All right, carries. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, y'all.
Next item that we have, under 14C, is the selection of Texas Association of School Board Delegate and Alternate.
As a member of Texas Association of School Boards, we are provided the opportunity to select a delegate to represent our district at the TASB Delegate Assembly in Dallas on September 25th, 2021. The purpose of the TASB delegation is to elect TASB leadership, amend TASB bylaws, and adopt TASB's advocacy agenda. The Board of Trustees must take action to either select a delegate and alternate or determine that the district will not participate in the delegate assembly this year. It is the recommendation of administration that Mr. Jerry Atkins represent Brazosport ISD as our TASB delegate and Mr. Scott Schwertner as alternate. I'd also like to thank Mr. Atkins for his commitment to be involved and engaged with TASB activities and advocacy, and you're an excellent representative of Brazosport as a TASB delegate, if the board approves you.
I move for approval.
I second.
All right, it's been moved by Scott and seconded by Ms. Cuellar. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by nay.
Can't vote twice, can I?
No.
Okay, never mind.
All right.
Also, BISD is presenting at the,
Well, we sent a proposal
Oh.
to present, yes,
Well, I
sir. We
voted
should-
for it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we should know, this sometime soon, I guess.
Next week, isn't it?
No, this is the one that,
In Columbus in
in September in Dallas, yeah. Yeah, we submitted with, in partnership with Brenda George on the, suicide prevention stop program.
There's no way that can't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's going to vote against that? And did I miss it, but do we also have Scott as our backup?
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
You read it.
All right. Perhaps I wouldn't. All right. The next item that we have is our work session discussion. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is July the 19th. Last thing, we have executive session may be called for the purposes permitted by the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Sections 551.001 through 551.146, Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, Sections 551.72, real property, Sections 551.074, personnel matters, appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, dismissal, or complaint. We'll be back.
Rebecca, you said we have a meeting on August 2nd? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Rick, you didn't know what you were getting into, staying up, taking this game, didn't you?
I'm sorry.
No big deal.
Lita, she's over there tapping on her. All right, so this is the last board meeting. No, Lita's over there like this, this is my last board meeting, we're still here, that's exactly what she said.
Yeah, let's keep it a little longer.
8:47. We return from our regularly scheduled, executive session. Unless there is any objection, then we will stand adjourned.
Stand adjourned.
There you go. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, good to have you back.
So.